Welcome to Compact Warfare from compactwarfare.com, the show where we explore key moments from the history of conflict, from ancient battlefields to modern warfare. This is episode 36, the Falklands War. The Falkland Islands, known in Argentina as the Islas Malvinas, are a remote archipelago located in the South Atlantic, approximately 300 miles off the coast of South America. For nearly 2 centuries, these windswept islands have been the subject of a bitter territorial dispute between the United Kingdom and Argentina. Though under British control since 1833, Argentina has long maintained its claim to the islands. This simmering tension erupted into a full-scale war in 1982 in a conflict that would involve naval blockades, amphibious landings, fierce ground battles, and the loss of hundreds of lives. In the early 1980s, Argentina was governed by a military dictatorship, facing widespread economic hardship and growing civil unrest. The junta, led by General Leopoldo Galtieri, believed that reclaiming the Falklands would unify the country and distract from domestic issues. On the 2nd of April 1982, Argentina launched Operation Rosario, deploying hundreds of troops to seize control of the islands. The small British garrison at Port Stanley was quickly overwhelmed, and the Argentine flag was raised. Jubilant crowds gathered in Buenos Aires to celebrate the return of what they considered their rightful territory. However, the reaction in London was swift and resolute. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, facing her own political pressures at home, viewed the invasion as a challenge to British sovereignty and national prestige. The British government assembled a large naval task force within days. Aircraft carriers, submarines, destroyers, and troopships were mobilised. Despite the vast distance between Britain and the Falklands, over 8,000 miles of ocean, there was a clear determination to respond with military force. Britain's initial strategy involved retaking the islands through a combination of naval supremacy and amphibious assault. The fleet included the aircraft carriers HMS Hermes and HMS Invincible, which would serve as launch platforms for Sea Harrier jets. Nuclear submarines were also dispatched to patrol the waters around the islands and monitor Argentine naval movements. One such vessel, HMS Conqueror, would soon play a decisive role. On the 2nd of May, just a month after the Argentine invasion, HMS Conqueror torpedoed and sank the Argentine cruiser General Belgrano. Over 300 sailors died in the attack. Though controversial due to the ship's location outside the declared exclusion zone, the British government defended the strike as a necessary military action. The loss of the Belgrano had immediate strategic consequences. The Argentine Navy, fearing further submarine attacks, withdrew to port and ceased offensive operations. This allowed the British fleet to operate more freely in the region. But the war was far from over. Argentina still held the islands, and its air force remained a formidable threat. Argentine pilots flew low-altitude sorties using Skyhawks and Super Etendards, often skimming just above the waves to avoid radar detection. In a series of daring raids, they inflicted serious damage on British ships. HMS Sheffield was struck by an Exocet missile on the 4th of May and sank days later. The merchant vessel Atlantic Conveyor was also lost, taking with it essential helicopters and supplies. These attacks shocked the British public and highlighted the vulnerabilities of modern naval warfare. Despite these setbacks, the Royal Navy maintained control of the sea, and British forces pressed on with plans for a ground invasion. On the 21st of May, troops landed at San Carlos Water on East Falkland, establishing a beachhead under constant air assault. The area quickly earned the grim nickname Bomb Alley due to the frequency and intensity of Argentine air attacks. Casualties were mounting, but the British were determined to push forward. The ground campaign was defined by endurance, strategy, and a series of hard-fought battles. The terrain was unforgiving. Boggy, windswept hills dotted with rocks and little cover. British troops, including Royal Marines, paratroopers and Gurkhas, advanced across the island toward Port Stanley, the capital and final objective. Along the way, they engaged Argentine forces in several key engagements. The Battle of Goose Green was one of the first major clashes. British forces, led by Lieutenant Colonel H. Jones, launched an assault on Argentine positions near the settlement. Jones was killed in action, and posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. After a day of fierce fighting, the British captured Goose Green and took hundreds of prisoners. Further east, British troops began the final push towards Port Stanley. Battles raged at Mount Longdon, Mount Harriet, Two Sisters, and Tumbledown Mountain. These nighttime assaults involved close-quarters combat, often in freezing conditions. Artillery and naval gunfire provided crucial support as British units gradually overcame Argentine defences. On the 14th of June 1982, with British forces poised to take Port Stanley and Argentine troops demoralised, the commander of Argentine forces on the islands, General Mario Menendez, surrendered. The war was officially over. Britain had retaken the Falklands, and the Union flag once again flew over Government House. The cost of the conflict was high. In just 74 days, 255 British servicemen and 649 Argentine personnel lost their lives. 3 Falkland Islanders also died. Many more were wounded or traumatized. The psychological toll on veterans, especially those who experienced the brutal ground fighting, would linger for years. Politically, the war had far-reaching consequences. In Britain, the victory revitalized national pride and boosted Thatcher's popularity. Her government, previously embattled, won a landslide victory in the 1983 general election. The war also led to renewed investment in the British military and a reassessment of defence priorities. In Argentina, the defeat shattered the credibility of the military junta. Public anger erupted, protests spread, and the regime collapsed within a year. In 1983, Argentina held democratic elections, ending years of dictatorship. In this sense, the war hastened a return to civilian rule and set the stage for political reform. Despite the end of hostilities, the sovereignty dispute continues. Argentina still claims the islands and refers to the conflict as an illegal occupation. Britain, however, maintains its position that the Falkland Islanders have the right to self-determination. In a 2013 referendum, an overwhelming majority of islanders voted to remain a British overseas territory. Militarily, the Falklands War remains a case study in logistics, joint operations, and rapid deployment. It demonstrated the value of naval air power, the importance of submarine warfare, and the challenges of sustaining a campaign thousands of miles from home. The war also exposed vulnerabilities, such as inadequate air defences and the reliance on outdated equipment, prompting reforms within the British Armed Forces. The Falklands War was a brief yet intense conflict that had a lasting impact on both countries. It was fought in an era of declining empires and rising national identities, a modern war in a remote setting. Though the islands themselves are small and sparsely populated, they became the focal point of a global drama. For Britain, the war was a demonstration of resolve. For Argentina, it was a national trauma and a turning point. For the world, it was a reminder that even in the late 20th century, territorial disputes could still ignite into open warfare. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Compact Warfare from compactwarfare.com. If you did, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.